Welcome to Shcmokes, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
And I am Dashita Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis. Hey, sis.
Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. Today's episode of Shcmokes, Florida Republican Matt Gaetz investigation enters cannabis. Skittles sues Zkittlez over trademark infringement. And Alabama wants medical marijuana, but not for real, for real.
Woo, okay. Well, listen, I know the tea is hot, so we're going to start things with what we always do, which is our high of the week. And I got a really cool high of the week because, you know, I'm always a proponent of trial and error and recognizing the importance of finding what works for you with cannabis because it is not a monolithic thing, not one size fits all. So Tetragram is my high of the week. It's a Black-owned digital platform and app where you can find what works. It's essentially a digital diary. So I know, Ice, you know that I have a very, detailed diary of what strains, cultivars, what different modalities of cannabis work for me and my early signs of MS. And I'm very particular. And so when I found out that there was an app that was available in over 90 dispensaries across the country, they supported and promoted, and it was Black owned, I was like, yo, I definitely have to try it. So I just downloaded it and I am testing it, and I will definitely come back with more details for Shcmokes because this is one of those things where I feel like it's technology, it's getting in where you can fit in, it's solution oriented, it's everything that I talk about in my workbook, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry. And so I'm definitely proud of the efforts of Tetragram. And so you should check it out. You can go to tetragramapp.com to check it out.
That is so dope. I definitely love Black people coming into the industry, crossing over their skills like we talk about. And just as somebody that also keeps track of their different strains that they've had, because I've had many, it is helpful to have like a diary that's kind of already set up for cannabis. So super dope. Everybody check that out. My high of the week is about the legacy market. You know, I still support the legacy market, and I'm okay with being honest about that. And I really wanted to shout out Chief Green's Shcmokes collection because he has a strain called Pineapples. And as the legacy market really starts to bring itself into the legal market, these are the examples that I do like to show because it is something where it's like not trademark infringement. Okay. It's not really saying, oh, this is this strain that it's supposed to be, and we have no idea how to seed to sell it, but it is like, smells like pineapples. It gives you these effects that help you stay up and alert. And I like that for the legacy market because without the regulation, we don't really know.
I'm glad you pointed that out. I mean, Chief Green is probably one of the few that, maybe not few. There's actually probably a lot that are starting to try to figure out their branding for themselves and trying to figure out where they play in the legal market. I'm not so sure about the Shcmokes, but, listen, at the end of the day, or even calling it pineapples, I think when you start to really do product development, and we talked about that in our Legacy to Legal event, you will need to just, be a bit more innovative. And that is really going to lead us to some of the hot topics we got to talk about today. But I definitely am excited always when you are highlighting some of the brands that are looking to make themselves known in the legal market as well.
Okay, and the hot topic number one is juicy. You guys, I am a news media, like government really investigator. I love to listen to what's happening in the investigation and in the media. And this has been a real hot topic for MSNBC and the CNNs of the world because U.S. Representative Matt Gaetz out of Florida, he is a Republican, is now having his investigation interlock in cannabis. And I'm super excited to talk about it because I've been wanting to talk about it anyway. Now, if you don't know, here's a little bit, here's a little bit of the backstory because, I got to get in the tea. Basically, they opened an investigation, the DOJ, on Matt Gaetz under human trafficking. He would go take these trips to the Caribbean islands, Bahamas, and he would have girls that were not quite legal and have them do all kinds of things allegedly for the government. And so they're taking a hard look into the investigation. There was a former associate of his that actually was getting indicted for it. And he was like, wait, you need to look at him. And they did. And now they are. And so with that being said, how does this tie into medical marijuana in Florida? You may ask, because Dashida did ask me that. What does it have to do with it? That's what she said. And so they're really surrounding their investigation under those things for his trip that he went to the Bahamas a couple years ago. And how to get into medical marijuana is that they basically had some of his associates that are big leaders in the medical marijuana space of Florida. And we know that is a very small space. They were on this trip with him, which now leaves the door open for them to investigate medical marijuana corruption in Florida. And so let's talk about it. Matt Gaetz has been a supporter of cannabis for a very long time, almost a decade. No one would have ever knew. He has sponsored quite a few bills for medical marijuana that didn't reach the ballot or reach the success of the legislator voting on it. But he did actually get approved for their medical marijuana program now. And what is very interesting is that his two associates that were in the Bahamas with him are the people that he works with in the medical marijuana. One is a former, a fellow Republican. I might mess these people names up, so y'all bear with me. Brasher, okay. And
okay.
Brasher. I'm a little, I already knew. And then he has, and he is a actual lawmaker. And then we have Perzolio, who is a doctor out of Orlando. And what's quite interesting is that in this bill, they wrote it to be very restrictive, which allows Brasher's family to have few of the licenses that are in the cannabis market. Perzoli, who is a doctor, felt like, hey, every company needs to have a medical doctor, a part of their board or a role in the medical marijuana. And so he forced his hand on that, and now that is in there. And he ended up creating a whole consulting company and association out of it and everything. So the tea is hot, honey.
It's very hot. And you know what? I was definitely questionable. I was like, listen, we don't have to report on things that don't make any sense if it don't, connect to cannabis. But you're right. We have seen that this representative, Matt Gaetz, has been a supporter of cannabis. Some people like to believe that cannabis is only Democratic supported just because of what's happened at the national stage. But the fact of the matter, on the state level, what has happened is usually it is a bipartisan topic. And so when you started breaking down the tea about some of these people who have gotten access to the industry, in a way that we know is very covetous, like monopolies. There are 5 licenses in Florida. This Bashir's family owns one of the licenses. So that means you basically have an ability to own at minimum 20% of the market, maybe more if you do more. And there's a doctor who has now influenced the legislation, testified, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There should be doctors associated with medical cannabis. It would help, however, if the doctors learned about the endocannabinoid system whilst in medical school, but it would also help if we knew that there were going to be an access to all types of doctors. So we have this, white male government official who is now potentially having pre-conversations with people, these 2 other white males, in order for them to be able to corner the market. Yes, if I'm in Florida, I'm already tight because there's only 5 freaking licenses. But now I'm more so tight because you're showing some level of proof that there was alleged corruption and colluding before these licenses became available. And that's the back channel conversations that we're not privy to as people of color, because we don't hold these roles, especially in states like Florida. And that's the back channel deals that create monopolies in a state where the medicine is still not the best for the patients. And the market is still criminalizing mostly Black and brown folks for being consumers.
Okay, you are speaking straight up facts. You know, a lot. It's so interesting that a fellow lawmaker whole entity can have a license, where in most states, you know, they do not allow regulators and lawmakers to have these type of licenses. So it is quite a curious thing. And, you know, everybody keeps sounding off in the comments, because like this just is hopefully blows open the Florida medical marijuana program. Hopefully this opens up the licenses and the patients, because they're like, hey, our people really like having medical marijuana. They don't like the way the system is. And the system was jacked up since he's been trying to introduce it since 2014. So there's an element of it. Use this investigation to your advantage, okay? Use it to your advantage. How? You can show them that y'all wanted medical marijuana, but they did not operate in the right way to do it. And so they need to go back, look at that framework, and correct it. So I mean, it really is juicy. I'm like, what happened on this Bahamas trip? How many more medical marijuana programs are in there? You know, did they have somebody from somewhere else and didn't tell us? And you know, they help him with campaign funding too. So that's also something that they're probably gonna have to look at for the investigation as well. So, because you know, money talks and BS walks. Okay.
Okay. Well, listen, you got all the receipts. I am definitely going to be waiting to hear, because I wasn't following any of this. I was like, oh, another politician is being caught with his pants down. Right. And what are we going to do about it? This is the problem that we have with our country, and, you know, how we've allowed people to be in charge, and they dictate how we live, you know, ultimately. And so I hope that these are just points of encouragement to why we need to actually continue to vote, continue to be vocal, continue to be civically engaged all the time about everything, and not just about cannabis.
Oh, and with that being said, we're going to move to hot topic number 2, because we need some people to be a little bit more engaged here, which is all about them banning something that we actually don't know all about. Let's talk about it. And it is one of the hottest trends to hit cannabis yet, right? We've seen CBD blow up and blow out, but now there's been this new trend about Delta. We haven't covered it a lot because, you know, Dashida's the scientist. I am not, okay? I am the tea catcher. But the tea is saying that Delta 8 is being banned. Delta 8 along with Delta 9 is being banned in many states like Alaska, Arkansas, Arizona, Colorado, Montana. A lot of these states that have actual cannabis in like a cannabis market, whether it's a medical marijuana program or adult use program, and they're banning Delta 8. Why? You know what I'm saying? They're like trying to set potency limits, trying to limit the ways they could create products with Delta 8. And, you know, because they're feeling really empowered to do this, because the DEA's controlled substance list, Schedule 1 includes Delta 9, and that's illegal in all 50 states. So, you know, some cannabis experts are recommending people don't do any Delta products without having an actual adult use license.
Where do I begin? I mean, I'm a frustrated scientist because I work in a world where people who get to make the rules have like little to no scientific understanding and knowledge, and it becomes really frustrating. So let's start, like, you know, back up a bit just to talk about the fact that the Delta nomenclature is related to where the double bond is on one of the carbon rings for THC. It's all THC. It just is because of a chemical reaction, we've had that bond shift, and whether it's at the 8 spot, the 9 spot, or the 10 spot. what we ban as regular THC is just Delta 9 THC. So, you know, when we talk about Delta 9, it's not nothing more than what we've already been demonizing forever. The difference between Delta 9 and Delta 10 for the average person looking at the molecule, the picture of the molecule, you're not going to be able to see it. It's actually one of those type of tests where they say which one of these things is different, and you got to really look for it. But yeah, the problem I have more than anything else is not only do people not understand that basic science, that we're talking about a very minimal change in the molecule, but that does have some impact on what happens physiologically. We haven't studied it, but the only way you also make these things are really through isolation of CBD, for example. And I think I struggle about the fact that the government continues to try to govern isolates or isolated molecules, as opposed to really understanding that it's the whole plant that really delivers what we need for our endocannabinoid system. And whole plant is still the safest way for us to, I believe, ingest it. Your body uses what it needs, and everybody's body is different. Everybody's endocannabinoid system is different. It uses what it needs, it stores what it doesn't, and then it can convert what it may need in the future. And what we're doing synthetically in a lab to create these, yes, can help with very acute things or levels that are, you know, really need high concentrated levels. And this is a much better way to get to that potency. But to be honest, part of the reason why the government is chasing regulation of these individual molecules is because we have business owners that are chasing the capitalistic opportunity around individual molecules. Isolates are just not really, in my opinion, where it's at, unless you're doing topicals, personal care products, things that you will put on your skin, where you don't have that direct line to the blood system, or a very, very severe and acute situation. And I believe when you're ingesting isolates, you should be under the care of a health professional, because once it's in that powder isolated stage, it is actually not that different from some of the things that we get prescribed as opiates, right? These are isolated compounds. Ibuprofen is an isolated compound. And if you take too much, it can cause the lining of your stomach to start to deteriorate, right? So when you talk about isolates, at the end of the day, we're talking about something that generally that's not the way our body prefers to take it in. And we're chasing it because we're trying to be the next new thing rather than do the right thing by the plant, which is learn about it in its full capacity.
Ooh, yes. Give them the tea, sis, because I agree. I have been asked so many times, especially in the South, I'm asked all the time by older generations, like, ooh, what is Delta 8? And it makes me, you know, they said it's going to make me feel like high, but not really. And I'm like, girl, I do not know. Okay, honey. I know the whole plant might help you with your backache, though. So it's the element of like, we don't really know what we're getting into. I mean, this is probably how we made crack. This is probably how we made, like, you know, meth, because if Adderall is one molecule away from meth, they was making meth in the lab. Right. To create prescription. So I do agree with what you're saying. And I think people don't know that all of the benefits that come with it. But my question though is, as they ban Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 9, we talked about it last week with Iowa, burning all the hemp plants that was over the THC limit. Are they just going to go around burning people's hemp, right? Because these are still cannabinoids that are naturally grown within the plant. Like if you're growing the plant right, it's going to grow like that.
Yeah. So I definitely don't want to mistake folks that the Delta 9 has always been illegal, and that's what we test for when we are looking at drug tests even, and testing plant materials. In order to make some of these other deltas, you do have to have some pretty significant chemical reactions happen. Some folks feel, and again, I don't know how true this is, that things like Delta 10, for example, you're not going to find naturally in the plant. It has to be created created as a result of a chemical reaction that may happen in the body, absolutely, right? But when we say it needs to happen, right? Our body makes chemical reactions all the time. We're doing it right now. But what we're doing is hopefully doing it towards a homeostasis, something of balance, so that we can be healthy. And so when it's done in the lab, it's done unnaturally. It is synthetic. So we're forcing the chemical reaction and forcing the creation of that delta 10. So no one's crops should be, I guess, affected, but someone's byproducts or manufactured products can absolutely be affected. For example, if you are making delta 10 products in a vape or any of those things, you're probably starting with a CBD and then making that transition. So you did it all legal through CBD, and then you went gray the minute that you started transforming it beyond that. And it starts usually with the CBD isolate, either in the crystalline form or the powder form, to make this happen.
Child, hell no. Hell no. Okay. We talk all the time about some organic and, you know, not eating processed foods. This feels real like processed foodie to me. And I'm just like, as a basic consumer, y'all need to just stick to the whole plant. Okay. Unless you're putting that on your skin or something, but no, child.
So let me ask you a question. When you say that, though, does that mean we are in agreement with the ban? I don't know if I'm in agreement with the ban on the premise of the ban. I think the premise of the ban is still fear-based, and it's still, again, governing by isolated molecules, as opposed to recognizing that we need to actually regulate the full genus. And it starts with the fact that it's a plant, so that's agricultural usually to begin. And then from there, we need to leverage the plant and its full opportunity to learn. And that means that doctors and PhDs and people who are, folks, agronomists that are interested in figuring out not only the business opportunity, but what are the health opportunities. The people that are doing this Delta 10 thing, it's all about the business opportunity. You know why? Because it's supposedly the answer to the people who feel like they're taking CBD and yeah, their wrists don't hurt, their knee don't hurt, but they want to take the edge off, right? They want to, still feel a little bit buzzed. Well, then to me, that means you need to find the right strain that actually has the right combination that will do that for you. You don't need to now, let me figure out what that next isolate thing is. I do agree with more blunts and stuff. Isolates are really for very specific things, in my opinion. Coming from a world of like Victoria's Secret beauty, isolates are what are used when you're creating personal care beauty products, because again, the skin doesn't have as, a readily available blood system for that to be crossed over. And there are other, ways that it can work. I believe that when you're ingesting it or consuming it into the bloodstream, it makes sense for it to be the full spectrum.
Well, I don't agree. I'm going to say I don't agree with the bans because, I don't like people that don't know shit to tell me what to do. So, if they can't explain the Delta thing like you just explained it, nah, you can't put no ban on it. But what I do need you to do is stop trying to sell it to me because I don't want that shit right now. So, I think there's the element of like, we are like, as a capitalist country, just creating more money, to your point, more business, and not really understanding what we're doing. And we could produce the next crack and don't even know it. So I think there's the element of like, you shouldn't ban it. I also don't understand why most of these cannabis states are actually banning it, right? Because they have the opportunity to educate themselves. If I had seen a Georgia on here, I'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Or Alabama or something, it makes sense. But to be Colorado, Alaska, Arizona, y'all already got this joint. Like, y'all need got university, and y'all need to look and figure out what the hell it is, because you're banning it and you have the permission to learn about it. I don't get it.
No, I actually agree with you fully. That's the part that really irked me, is that these are states that already have legalized Delta 9 THC, but that also shows you that they don't know what Delta 9 is versus the Delta 8 versus the Delta 10. They are just doing it because it seems they should. And they're also, they're doing that only in the hemp market. They're not doing that in the marijuana market. This bifurcation, trifurcation, if you look at hemp, medical cannabis, and adult use cannabis, makes it all the more crazy. And that's why we're saying you got to govern with the science as your base, and at least have people who know the science advising you and providing that information. It is actually Googleable what these different deltas mean. I mean, somebody's like, oh, you wouldn't know that unless you have a background in chemistry or molecular biology, which I do, so I agree, and I guess that's why I do educate. But there's a lot of people who know about biology and chemistry, and you do have universities at your disposal that you could be like, listen, can you come and advise on this? But advise with the purpose of freeing the plant, not further enforcing crazy fear-mongering laws.
Yes, that's what I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of banning something that you don't know anything about. You know, that's how you ban natural hair for forever years, right? Becky's and white men didn't know nothing about natural hair. So they had all these bans on our hair. And it's like, this is how it grow out my head. So I think there's an element of like, we have to stop banning stuff before we can even learn about it, you know? And that's really what I want to empower people to do. And I also want to shed some light that, you know, these states that are super, super legal are super, super banning elements of cannabis that they have no idea. And with that being said about like legal states, we're going to have to talk about some legal states with cannabis companies in hot water. And the hot water goes from Skittles suing Zkittlez. That's like a tongue twister. Who can say that 10 times fast? Not me. But yes, if you know about the cannabis market, you already know like the Zkittlez strain has been literally taken over like all of the markets. Like it's been one of the hottest strains. And I remember the first time we had it in like, I want to say maybe 2019. We were like, what is orange Zkittlez? What is this? You know what I'm saying? I think you were still calling it Skittles. But let's get into the trademark infringement. So the owner of Skittles, which also owns Starburst and Lifesaver candies, filed a complaint against, I don't even know their name, Turcogs, there, which is, you know, they make a THC and THC candy, but they also have a strain of it. So it gets real confusing. Why is it also confusing? Because they filed lawsuits in 3 different areas, in Illinois, in California, and in Canada. And they just want Zkittlez to just stop. Stop with the clothing and merchandise. Stop with the logo. Stop with the website. And they want them to hand everything over to Skittles, which, you know, that's a little like, gosh, look at the eye a little close because everybody want to be in cannabis. They want them to hand it over because at the end of the day, Skittles feels like it's way too confusing. Their actual collateral looks way too much like theirs, and that, you know, Skittles is a family candy that is meant to be shared with the family. And if cannabis is not supposed to be marketing to children, then it should not have our logo or our name on it.
Yeah, you know, I'm like, where do I start? You know, I've written about this many of times for Entrepreneur magazine, and I feel that this is one of those areas where I am constantly saying we have remnants of the legacy market that aren't always good. Like we take some parts and then not others, and this is one of those where we have to work out those challenges or the gaps in knowledge. A lot of things that I have seen in the legacy market, and I tell you this every time I have been to a pop-up or, you know, recognize that I'm talking to someone who's an entrepreneur. There is a lot of lazy marketing because you literally are taking a whole concept that you saw and maybe in your mind on the right strain, you were like, that was a good idea. And you now name your thing that. But in the legal market of any type of business, there is something called trademark infringement. And essentially it makes it so that it allows people to say, hey, I made this. Like I actually have the weed head trademark. I am the weed head. And so if someone else is trying to now create things around that, I have a power from authority of the United States to say, nope, I've already claimed that. It allows you to almost stake claim to things. Skittles have been around forever, and they are a very large consumer packaged good company. Like you said, it is the Wrigley's brands of company, of business. And I think that should be concerning to anyone. But we've seen this before, right? Starbucks drugs with the Dabbuccino. That was actually in 2017, and one of the first big companies to actually come out and be like, nah, that's not happening. Most times in the past, people did not want to affiliate themselves with cannabis. They didn't even want to wind up in the media with cannabis. And so because of that, you know, it made it so that they stayed away. And now cannabis is big business. It's all over media how big of business cannabis is. And so they're like, word, you want to make money off our brand? Not only will you pay, because that's also trademark infringement isn't just stop. Like that's a cease and desist. They may give you that, but sometimes they can also say, we want to see the receipts and we want to get a portion of that too. But that's how, you know, real business folks do right now. Publicly, Skittles is, you know, really saying, oh, we're a family brand. So that would look poorly on them. But that doesn't mean that that's not the settlement that they may wind up with, right? Just being real, because Zkittlez has absolutely been around for a while, and it hasn't, you know, to me, it hasn't really changed in its positioning. I have been calling it Skittles, Zkittlez, like I've called it Skittles before. It looks just like it. So those are the, you know, real obvious things. But there are things where it could just be one of the leaves of the way you angled your brand, and someone could be like, that looks like my brand, and so no, you can't use it. So I just think in general, it goes back to what I said at the top of the hour, which is, you just have to be more innovative. You want to be in the space? No problem. Innovate. And that means not drawing your inspiration from something that already exists, particularly something that is consumed as a consumer product that already exists. If it's in a different market, you may have a little bit, but even with Gorilla Glue, we saw that it's not really a consumable. You can't put it for your hairline on your on your wig either. Okay, so it's like it really has one purpose, but they still was like, no, you can't have the strain called Gorilla Glue either. We've had Girl Scout. They did that 2 years ago with Girl Scout cookies.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, they're coming for us. You know, as a Black freedom liberation advocate, okay, it is definitely hard because in my book of principles, I do think capitalism sometimes kills innovation, right? If you're just trying to make a buck, you're not going to be that innovative. But if you actually care about your cannabis, you get real creative with the names like you do with your children, okay? So there's an element of like, you know, everyone's so hungry for the paper that they haven't actually took time to really be innovative. Kind of see that with the Delta, seeing that with the medical marijuana. So I definitely think we are struggling here in the industry because we want the capital, but we're missing the innovation in the right ways, right? We're trying to isolate cannabinoids, but we're not trying to isolate and have our own damn name for a strain that we like. So, you know, it's like I'm definitely feeling a little bit of a seesaw effect in the cannabis industry. But nonetheless, you guys, let me know if y'all see this being snatched off the shelves in your dispensary, especially in Illinois and in California. And I would definitely love to hear how this goes in Canada, because I don't even know what type of trademark laws they have.
Well, they have a similar type of trademark law, and I think really there's international trademarks, right? You can register your brand in multiple countries at the same time by doing an international trademark. So once you start dealing in that, we're talking about bigger money. They may want to see the books, and because of that, I'm a little concerned. But at the same time, I feel like this is the lesson that we're going to have to learn. And again, you're right, we are missing innovation. People are going to have to look at points of parity. Do your research within the cannabis space, but also others that are cannabis adjacent and/or consumer products. Because at the end of the day, cannabis is an ingredient that is going to be in a lot of consumer products. They may be consumer products that are medical grade, a higher strength. They may be consumer products that you can buy OTC, over the counter. They may be consumer products that are more holistic and wellness oriented, but they're consumer products nonetheless. So pay attention to what you expect to do in that market and do it when you are trying to get into the cannabis space.
Yes. You are preaching. Okay, we going to church on Saturday, you guys.
I'm speaking.
Okay. And as we talk about markets, let's talk about Alabama. Because I heard they want medical marijuana, but not for real. and it reaches the governor's desk. So let's get into it. Alabama has a medical marijuana bill that reached the governor's desk, y'all. And this bill, SB 46, is the Alabama Compassionate Act. It is basically, going to create a whole marketplace for them, sis. Can you believe that? And yeah, this bill did pass the House. It passed the House and it passed the Senate. Flying colors. However, they did give a very long ass debate like they did in New York over this bill. And like whatever debate they were having, you think the bill was as good as New York. And so let's get into some of these things about it. So Alabama's medical marijuana bill would not include the raw plant, smoking, vaping, nor candies and baked goods. Mm-hmm. Okay. The commission has to determine, it sets up a commission. Sorry, you guys, just so you know, it sets up a medical cannabis commission that will license the medical marijuana program. And this commission will also determine the maximum daily dose of THC that can be recommended for the qualifying conditions. But it cannot exceed 50 milligrams. And then minors cannot use more than 3% of THC. Now, there is a lot of things that are quite interesting with this bill. It is going to be a 14-member commission that will be in charge of implementing and licensing the regulation of it. Mm-hmm. And of course, the Department of Agriculture got its hand in because they will be the ones managing and overseeing the cultivations. So this is a pretty bad bill already.
I'm just, I'm sitting here and there's a part of me, well, just so everyone understands where we are, Alabama, right? Mm-hmm. As in Selma, right? There is a real disparity in terms of racial disparity as far as arrests are concerned related to cannabis. So we know that history. There's also a real disparity in the incarceration terms. So how long people are in jail. They haven't resolved any of that. However, they did recently decide that they were going to decriminalize and expunge some records on simple possession. And so that's been the new thing we're saying in Oregon. If Alabama could do it, then Oregon can figure it out. Okay. But what I will say is this is one of those things where that you're setting up a market to do poorly. It reminds me of Minnesota's market, limited licenses, limited capability of what you can actually grow and sell, limitations on the THC limits, THC potency in your flower, and not that different from some of the hemp, laws. I'm not sure, again, how helpful this is. And, if I'm one of the people who is in this area, I'm thinking I don't support the bill and I'd rather just it not be legal, just continue to decriminalize. You don't have to set up a market for us to save people's lives and to change people's lives. This market setup is purely for capitalizing, and that's for the people who are going to be the operators, but also for the state. They see it as revenue. And the way they're doing the revenue, they're taxing both the operators, which are very limited, so they're giving them what they call a privilege tax, and they're also taxing the actual sales at 9%, which means that they're on the lower end compared to other states like Washington State is 37%, I believe. But New Jersey is 6.25%. So we have that as where they're getting money. And then they're going to have licenses that are $10,000 to $50,000 per license in terms of application. I'm again, looking at this and I'm saying this is a hot mess from an economic perspective. And when it doesn't do well, when it doesn't create the market the way they expected and doesn't eradicate the illegal market, we have all these different ways that they start to try to fix that. You can be more hyper enforcement on the illegal market, the legacy market, or you can make it so that, again, you give more access to the same people who are already in the market, which is kind of what Florida did, supposedly to fix it by adding flower, but they didn't add more licenses, really.
No, they did not. But they had their conversation about how the framework should be set up, allegedly, in the Bahamas. So, you know, who knows where they decided to have this framework conversation. Doesn't sound like it was in Birmingham, Alabama. They currently have 20 conditions listed to qualify for medical marijuana, which they do have PTSD. They have some pain relief, anxiety, sleeping disorders. So these are some of the generic ones we see all across the board. So it seems like a lot of people can qualify for the medical marijuana. But to your point, they'll only have 12 cultivations licenses. There are no more than 4 processors. There are no more than 4 dispensaries. They do have a caretaker type program, but there's no conversation about homegrown plants for patients, even though we know Alabama got hella land. So if you only got 4 dispensaries, at least let me grow it in my already growing something backyard. And what's very interesting about this that we have not seen in a lot of states is that the ownership, in order to be transferred, cannot do it without the regulator's approval.
Yeah, I mean, to me, again, this is what we see when we have fear as the basis of our legislation, as opposed to the reality of the science behind the plant or the systemic racism that has been, embedded in cannabis criminalization. They have no desire to do either. There's no equity in this at all. I question patient equity because 4 dispensaries with up to 3 locations basically means there are 12 places in the state of Alabama that you'll be able to legally get cannabis. And that isn't enough. And we know that's not enough because that's not the way the legacy market is set up. Most people have a couple of plugs that they know because sometimes you got it. It's the same way we shop anywhere else. It's like, all right, I'm going to check my favorite store first. If it don't got it there, then I'm going to go here. And you also want variety. And I think that the way they've set it up, I'm glad they at least increased the cultivation from 4 to 12. House bill had 4. I think Senate's bill had 12, and the Senate's bill, I believe, is actually taking a precedent here. Those bills were not the same. And so that's why this has not fully passed yet, and it hasn't gone to the governor's desk. Those bills were, and in order for that to go to the governor's desk, it has to be the same exact bill. We saw this issue in New Jersey and it stalled a bit, but this is what has now happened. It has to go back to the Senate's floor in order for them to address some of these amendments to make it match. And it looks like the Senate is trying to match the House. But this is ridiculous. I'm not sure, again, how I can even express just without cussing and being being extra, that this is just the type of stuff that sets up the people who live in Alabama on a whole different lifestyle introduction or reintroduction to cannabis as medicine. It's restrictive, and any market that does not have flower is still going to be a problematic market. It's still going to be a market that people are going to see that in the legacy market at least.
Well, don't worry, Dashida. You don't have to be cussing and fussing because I will cuss and fuss for you. And really, the tea and the gag is that Mississippi bill was real, real good. It was open, it was free, and it allows patients to really benefit from cannabis. And even though lawmakers tried to trick them, we had a whole episode about it last season on Shcmokes, tried to trick the people still came out and voted for the right ballot. Well, Alabama was like, oh, no. They're going to have to go through a process in order to get the people's choice in the type of medical marijuana market they want. So they jump in the gun and they pass in this quickly because they know the people are connecting and really forming a union. You know, it don't matter what kind of or a coalition. It doesn't matter what color you are, because we found out that, like, despite the color, the background, and the cultural difference, all of us want cannabis. Yes. And so they're jumping the gun, and they're going to make the people really fight to have some changes made to the amendment. And so that's the real tea here. Alabama, don't be fooled. They care about medical marijuana because they want to be like Georgia and know that the people will have a harder time to change the market to the right way it should be by implementing a law quickly that is shitty.
You're right. They have basically read the tea leaves when they saw what happened with Mississippi, that if they have to go head to head with what a law that was created by the advocates and the people, it will be a more common sense law, obviously, with a lot more openness, and they will potentially lose. And so they are jumping the gun. And this is the political push that we get from people who we put in charge. So you got to vote differently. And you also got to let people know that you're not there to play with them either. The government belongs to the people. And so if you're not going to create a law for the people, then you don't need to be the lawmaker anymore. It's simple.
Period, Pooh. Period. And you do make a good point, because it's not for the people, because this little red line item is that in the actual bill, they have application starting and opening on September 1st, 2022. Even tells you that, you know, your application will be granted or denied in 60 days. And, you know, they have 60 days to fix it if something's wrong with it, all these things. But in the same breath, they have no time frame for patients' applications, for patient program. They have no way to determine how these, you know, medical doctors will prescribe cannabis to their patient. So don't be fooled, people. It's about the money. It's not about the patients.
And then it got a lot of nerve to name this a Compassion Act. Like, that's what marketing, I mean, we have been fooled for so long as it pertains to cannabis. So now we've been naming all these acts, same thing with California Compassionate Care Act. At the end of the day, you are saying you're trying to have compassion, but in fact, you're not actually integrating that into the law. And you're seeing that it already has failed in other states. Minnesota is essentially a bankrupt medical market because of the way that they've implemented. We just talked about the alleged corruption in the Florida market because of the way that they've implemented. And so this to me is right up the alley of some of the southern states not really caring about it, but they want to brand it like they care. But you don't really care. We've got to do better about, again, calling it out, calling it what it is. Don't tell me it's a compassionate act when you really have no compassion for the people and the folks that were most harmed. This bill isn't going to improve things for people of color, Black people specifically in Alabama that have borne the brunt of some of the worst systemic racism in our country. We got different types of racism in our country. We know that exists. And Alabama, as you know, is one of those states that I don't even like driving through, is one of those states that has a history of racism that is just the word, it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And that yet this is not a law that has any equity. We don't even talk about it, right? But right. I, again, have to at least give them some nod in that they did absolutely start the process of expungement. And so there are some things happening, but it's not really happening in a way that's to benefit the Black people, Black and brown people who are in the state.
No, it is not. None of this been, I mean, unless they had homegirl, I could not understand how this bill benefits anybody other than them putting a point of finger like, hey, you're a patient because you got PTSD and anxiety. Like, there is like nothing that feels compassionate to me. This just is giving me real, just diversity and inclusion cosplay. It's giving me patient care cosplay. Like, they are definitely just embodying bullshit. I'm sorry. This is why I wanted to call it out, because they cannot do this. We're not accepting this. We are not letting you guys get away with it anymore. It's like the whole TV show. Everything on the TV is now, it's so hard being Black. I'm Black, and we know America don't treat us like Black. It's like, shut up, pay me. Because it's like, where's the money at with some of this stuff? It's not, I don't need your tears. I actually need your real help.
Yes.
I think there's an element of like, I don't want to cry no more. I don't want to talk about how hard it is to not have cannabis anymore. Y'all know it. Y'all see it. Y'all see what y'all have done when we use cannabis. Go back and fix it the right way, and you got to go home.
Absolutely. I think that when I say how you're going to win when you're not right within, this is what I'm talking about. And I can't see, like Michael said, the legacy market going away. But what I worry about are the people, the diversity of people, right? Because there's a whole bunch of people in the legacy market that are consumers and or entrepreneurs being, again, the brunt of poor regulatory frameworks, and that includes enforcement, and that includes incarceration and further lives being destroyed and the collateral damage as a result. So hopefully we can stop it in its tracks. That's why we talk about it on Shcmokes. That's why I'm glad it was a main topic, because we have a lot of people around the country in cannabis acting like this is a celebratory moment because we get to count off or check off another state as medical. But if it ain't real, then it's sort of one of those things where, is it doing us more harm than good? And I'm starting to believe that it does us more harm when we try to celebrate things that are little baby steps forward, when we have half a whole coast that is leap yards and ahead, and we can learn from that. We act like Alabama is in a whole nother country. We act like
Right.
Georgia is in a whole nother country. And when I see the case of the young man who got arrested driving from Arizona, where he was a medical patient, to whatever state, and getting arrested, it might have been in Alabama.
It was in Alabama.
Exactly.
You're right.
And why? Because really he got harassed. He was at a gas station jamming to some music, and the police officer felt that this Black boy Joy was not going to be tolerated. And that's even how they even came into his presence. So we're talking about a state, again, that doesn't actually respect or care for Black lives, period, and hasn't ever in its history of it being part of the union, but it is still part of the United States. It's still connecting to states that have legalized programs. And we need to be at a point now where we're demanding that this segmented way of life no longer be, right? It reminds me of being back in the 60s and the 50s, where it was, you might be in one state where you could eat at a counter with a white person, and then you done gone to the next state and you done lost your mind because you didn't realize that you ain't supposed to be at that counter. And now I feel that way with cannabis the more I travel around the country.
Yes, it's a civil rights issue. Civil rights issue. And, this Compassion Act is giving me real performative compassion right now. It's not real compassion. This is a performance, you guys, and it's time for them to end the show. And hopefully we got some people out in Alabama. I know some people in Alabama. Every Black person probably know at least one person in Alabama, truth be told.
With
you
land
need to let them.
Okay.
Yes, with land. You need to go ahead and tell them to call their lawmakers and tell them that they lost their ever-loving mind trying to do a compassion act on medical marijuana and don't know not one thing about it, okay? Because it's really just giving me performative. Like, is it a performance? Like, are y'all really trying to allow medical marijuana? Like, we could really talk about it for days. I mean, literally 4 days. We do talk about it for days, but we can't talk about it 4 days today. But it is, this was a lot to unpack for me, because every cannabis outlet that I'm following was like, Alabama. I'm like, Alabama? You know what I mean? went there and I read it and I'm like, oh,
Yes.
Went to MPP because they give you a really good summary. Shout out to MPP. They gave a really great summary of different bills. And I mean, MPP broke that down. I didn't have to read the 102 pages to know it was bullshit.
Right. No, I definitely appreciate MPP's breakdown. They're one of the URLs that I, keep on a little bookmark just to see what has been updated, especially when you want to compare different bills. But you're right. I think that we have to call out our media, even cannabis media, the same way I've been calling them out about using recreational. Stop celebrating things that should not be celebrated, right? Stop celebrating things in the cannabis space. Call it what it is and stop pretending like we are light years ahead in the conversation already, please.
Okay, exactly. Thank you. Like, don't do it again. I don't never want to pop up and see another medical marijuana bill that is worse than the hemp farm bill, as far as I'm damn concerned. Worse than the hemp farm bill popping up on our screen and being like, ooh, is the governor going to sign it? I hope not. I hope she got something else to do, okay? Because we don't want her to sign that. Hello? So we are not here for it. But with that being said, thank you guys for joining us. Okay. Call them people in Alabama.
Yes. All right. So, of course, this has been a really, really tea-filled week. And I want to thank you so much for bringing that tea. And, of course, everybody can find the tea on all of the platforms that we're on. I just want to shout out that we're now on Audible as well. We literally are any place that you're listening to anything, you can find Shcmokes, which means that you can go all the way back. You can binge more than 70 episodes. We have been doing the thing. It's always exciting, of course, to just, again, shout out my little sis for this being your brainchild and including Big Sis on with the show.
Yes. Well, I love to talk trash. And so, I really went in. We really went in on Alabama, but we also, again, Black freedom fighter. This is part of Black freedom fight for us. Is like, listen, they really doing some crazy stuff down here. Yeah. And, I'm definitely on Audible. And then I want to make sure we talk to everybody about the next 2 weeks, because we are going to have to change the time from the noon o'clock-ish. We be on CP time, y'all. We be on CP time a little bit, you know what I'm saying? So we might be somewhere around noon. But for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be way afternoon. So
yes. We are doing some New York events. I got a shout out to Senator Sanders in New York, as well as the Majority Leader Crystal People-Stokes. So they have booked us back to back to participate in cannabis education events. And that's the type of stuff we need legislators to do, to tell the truth, bring in the experts who are going to help and share that information. So I'm excited to be joining my sisters, as always, as we start to cease that misconception around cannabis and convert people into true believers and understanders of the cannabis health equity movement. So
yes. So next week is Senator Sanders is going to be an MWBE forum on cannabis supply chain and how having an MWBE will help benefit it. It will actually be streamed live on Facebook. So we'll be on Facebook all day next week. And then that next week is Majority Leader Crystal People-Stokes 101 Cannabis. And these are things she's been doing for a long time. We've participated in almost every one of them. They're super, super informational. That will be streamed as well. So, super excited. And we probably will not be on our Shcmokes until 3 p.m. However, we still want you guys to come back and rock with us and drop your thoughts and comments, because there is still cannabis tea regardless.
Absolutely. Education doesn't stop the tea. In fact, it maybe enhances it, because we get to do a little tea and shade. All right.
I'm a shady bunch.
I'm going to give an educational shade. Let's be real, because I want you to learn some stuff.
No, I'm going to just read you for filth. So don't be coming up in here with the bull, because I'm going to just read you. Okay. I'm going to give you a real Love and Hip Hop, Real Housewives of America read. Okay. Thank you.
You are hilarious, but that's also why it's important to have both of us. So we can make sure we are at least set it folks' way, told, but also learned at the same time. But no, I appreciate, as always, you sharing the voice of the people, because some people just don't get it without being, breaking it down that way. And we could be polite, but I'm over that respectability politics. I am done with it. And I feel like it's important for especially Black, Indigenous, Latinx, people of color to, step out and say exactly what's going on, and try to educate people on how they've been able to implement change. And we should be proud of it. And I'm excited to continue. So that being said, we got about a minute left. I cannot wait to see you next week. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you first, or shall I go first?
I will tell everybody, so you can have the last word. Dashida, Davida, Devase, the diva. Sorry. I called her our sister's name, but she's the diva of the family, so I'll let you go last. You can listen to us anytime on SoundCloud, Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, and you can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, anytime. Make sure you follow us at _Blaze on IG and on Facebook. And then you can follow me too, because I say the most ridiculous stuff, even outside of cannabis, at the Cannabis Socialite on IG.
And of course, you guys know that you can find me at Dashida Dawson on Twitter and IG. I've been lighting up my Twitter lately because I got thoughts. And sometimes when you're in the middle of some of these meetings, you have to say something. And maybe I can't say it directly to the person, but I will tweet about it. And so, I'm being real when I do so, because I say what I want. And that being said,
with all the cannabis educators out here too, we have a whole cannabis educator line on Twitter. So
that's so true. You're absolutely right. That being said, thank you so much, Ice, for another amazing week. We will see you guys next week a little bit later, but still join us live on Facebook. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.